Today, there was no checkpoint this week, but news still happened. This is ChillPoint.
That's weird because I swear I put in a request for them to not do any news while we were off. For
I
the
know.
Last couple of
I
weeks.
know. It's like when all the
It's gonna happen. They know. They got to look for some stuff.
when the big talk shows go off for like summer, and then like
Oh yeah.
that was when like all the big political news happened.
Yeah, that because it seemed like every other week the late night shows were taking a week off, and then because it's like, oh, we get this week off, and it's like, okay, cool, I guess, and they're back for like a week and a half or whatever, and they get another week off, and then they're
That's the real problem. They
Yeah.
leave that room and they leave the light on.
and then it's like, oh, but don't worry, we'll be back until the Olympics start, so we're only back for a week, and then we're off for 3 weeks, and a whole bunch of other crap happens, and yeah. So it's been. You know what? I don't ever want to host a late night talk show, given the amount of work I hear that they have to do to make that kind of thing happen. But it does seem like fun.
Well, it's the random late night talk show stuff, but they've been doing, because of the Democratic Convention.
Yeah.
They've all been doing like live shows in Chicago,
Yeah, Colbert was there.
which has got to be a logistical huge effort. I remember they were talking about on the Daily Show that they were set up they did all the work to do a live show for the Republican convention.
yeah.
Then, for obvious reasons, they slammed down on security anywhere around the
That's fair.
place, and so they had to go from doing a live show to going back into their studio.
Yeah.
And so apparently, like, it was, the behind the scenes people had to do, which is something that I heavily sympathize for. Anyway, hey everybody, welcome to ChillPoint,
We have some things to tell you today.
the show, where we talk about some video game news. Normally we'd be talking about the episode Checkpoint that went up.
But not today.
No episode Checkpoint
No.
This week. Also, no episode next week for similar reasons.
We've killed Checkpoint. It doesn't exist anymore. There's only ChillPoint. We finally won.
I didn't realize it was like
It's
a
always a
competition.
fight. There's always a competition, Paul.
I thought it was like a symbiotic relationship.
No, not anymore.
Oh, all right.
First you lure them into thinking that it's okay because you're just there, standing there, not saying anything, and then once they turn their back, stab.
It's no longer a lecture and lab, and now it's a seminar series. You just have to show up. You don't have to write any homework. You just get to listen and attend. You get your 7 out of 9. You get to leave.
It's like you know who thinks it's a symbiotic relationship? The one who loses. Anyway, the big thing this week in the video game world was that Gamescom is happening in Cologne, Germany, I believe, is where it happened.
I know it's in Germany.
Yeah.
I don't know specifically where.
They don't pronounce it Cologne.
Cologne? Yeah.
I don't know.
Because like the French will spell it with a C, but the Germans will spell it COLON or something like that. I have a feeling. There's always different spellings. But.
Anyway, which is the biggest video game convention in the world. Even when E3 was active, it was still the biggest. And it's bigger. So, there's that Tokyo Game Show, and E3 used to be like the big three.
Yeah.
And now, hey, we only have 2? Well, whatever.
Yeah. And now we have 2, although, yeah.
There's GDC and stuff that people...
Yeah, GDC is a little different, though.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I mean, we do sometimes get more news out of GDC for our purposes than
It's
we
true.
do
That's
for
true.
other ones. So maybe we should consider GDC the big one for us.
Yeah. And for whatever reason, I guess there's some sort of contract he's got that Jeff Keighley delivered the introductory keynote or whatever
Right.
for this one as well. which apparently nobody else is allowed to do that anymore.
Oh well.
So
They have a keynote
well, he was
at
like
Gamescom?
not the keynote, but like the opening night.
Oh,
Because he was
Showing
streaming
out
it.
the
too.
the thing that they keep
The-
going. It's like those ads
op-
before movies where
The
people are
opening
just
night
like,
showing a bunch of trailers thing.
yeah, we all come in late while he's talking because we're not there for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, so there was a few. Now, as we've talked about many times on this show, these conventions are big news in the video game world, but for ChillPoint, they often aren't that useful because it's like this game exists, which is not that funny. I kind of liken it sometimes to like, there'll be like it's like, when a tidal wave is coming in,
Yeah.
first all the water rushes out. So there's like nothing there for a while.
Uh-huh.
And then everybody gets back from the convention, and often that's when all the sort of interesting stuff comes out.
Yeah.
But anyway, there were a few things that I thought were kind of fun that I marked. And I don't know if you two have seen any news around Gamescom, but
I mean, I looked through the list of the things in the article.
There was a Nintendo Direct.
What? Oh, well,
Nintendo Direct asterisks, not about video games.
technically a Nintendo Direct. It was about the museum thing.
We'll
That's
talk
not
ab-
Gamescom, though.
I'm going to talk a hair about that.
Okay.
'cause, Yeah, I'm going to meta talk about that.
I literally forgot that happened,
Yeah, not me.
even though I watched it with you and it was fun.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I'm making notes on things to do when we next go to Japan. So
Couple of things. So Civ 7. Now we saw the like very, very brief teaser trailer for Civ 7 at the Summer Games Fest. But they've actually started showing off some of the mechanics of it.
This is
and
the
some
part where they
stuff.
show
It's
the actual gameplay.
It's still coming out in 2025, but they showed some of the stuff. And what I thought was particularly interesting about it was Firaxis, apparently for a while now, they've had a policy for the Civ games where they sort of have this like keep half and then change half thing, where they want to innovate, but they, in this sort of idea of like innovating and making new systems to bring people in, but trying not to alienate the.
I mean,
Obviously,
yeah.
the Civ player base is, I would say, probably like deeply, well,
calcified.
well, I feel like
They know
there's-
what they like.
Yeah, they know what they like. I feel like it's one of those things where there's a lot of people who are still playing like Civ 2
Yeah.
and don't want to upgrade, and like they don't like it when things change because they've kind of figured out the mechanics. So they want to sort
I
of
mean,
ease people along.
history is a loop.
Yeah, and there have been some instances where like Civ Revolution when that came out,
Right.
people were like, Civ fans were like, "Yo, f this right in the A," and it's like, okay, cool, I guess. Like, I mean, I found Civ Rev way more because it was free on iOS for like a brief
Right.
period of time, so I downloaded it and I tried it, and I was kind of like, oh, I could play Civ, and apparently I can't. But I was like, I understand this a lot more than what I would expect that a much more intricate, delicate game is like.
It's because you're casual.
Yes, exactly. And it's like, so as a means of sucking people into the idea of playing like a 4X game like that, I guess might have had some use. But if you know your bread and butter is the people who love the way that your game has gotten more complicated over the years, yeah, maybe you don't want to break their experience.
And it's and some folks in the chat were saying, and I would also be interested, and maybe at some point in the future, when more info about the game comes out, it would be great to see Cameron's, as an avid Civ player, I would be very interested to see Cameron's take on it. I think.
I mean, I imagine
like-
Talking Sim would possibly end up like I think
Yeah.
they've played Civ
they've played
a
Civ
couple
6
times.
a few times. Yeah.
So I could imagine I could see Talking Sim getting Civ 7 and playing for a little bit on there, and I think Cameron streams Civ at home sometimes. So
I believe he's going through like every single nation or whatever. Anyway,
yeah, go ahead.
so the new Civ,
Yes.
some of the things that they've announced that I found interesting in terms of, not just, oh, hey, it's a new game, is so they have all, they've got all the stats
Yes.
for these things from Steam and all these different things. And apparently one of the things that they weren't super happy about is that less than 50% of people finish
A game.
a game of Civ, like ever finish a game of Civ. Which
okay, but is that like we start a game and then we never play it again, or is that like how Baldur's Gate 3 is? Everyone keeps playing up to like the second act and then they start over.
well, this is the interesting thing, is that he says that like part of it is that they're saying that that the initial part of the game where you're like going around exploring and stuff is more exciting than the latter part of the game where you're more sort of establishing and there's a lot of like sort of micromanagement stuff to work out and things.
Okay.
At least that's the perception
That they have.
that they have.
Because isn't there also like
they have various internal teams that they've been working on.
haven't we
trying
also
to
had
figure
stats like over the years of like, oh, people have this many like unplayed games completely, or like a bunch of games that people kind of start and never finish.
Yeah.
Especially like really big open world games and stuff.
So
That's true.
So what they've developed is a system that says, let's chop a Civ game into 3 distinct pieces.
Yeah, these sort of, they call them ages.
Yeah, and that way you can play a shorter piece and still not feel like you finished your game.
And yeah, so it's one that you can play just like one age,
Right.
but also like in the first age of the game, you can't. You're limited. You can't.
You're limited to only so much growth, or
You
or
can't travel
development?
overseas.
Ah, okay.
So you can build boats and stuff, but you
Right.
can only stay close. And so the idea is to sort of spread out the exploration part a little more,
Right, makes sense.
which is one of those interesting things where like, in a lot of cases, that's sort of what happened because of how the map is designed. But
right.
anyway, so it'll be interesting to see how this. The other thing that I thought was kind of interesting is they're decoupling and maybe people will tell me they've already done this, but I thought this was a new thing, is that they're decoupling the nation from the leader. So you can have like, Gandhi in charge of Spain,
Right.
or you can have, whatever. You can choose your leader and choose your nation separately, and they both have attributes and bonuses and whatever.
That's a
So you
cool
can
idea.
combine your favorite thing,
I
and
mean-
also end up with really weird combinations.
Yeah, it's interesting to think of, right? Because the idea behind doing that is not to say that it's like, well, a person that is born in a specific place at a specific time who becomes a, I don't want to say a figurehead, but maybe like a touchstone of cultural development or political development in a country. They have to be a product of their time and their space and the environment they grow up in that case, right? Like if India was never occupied by the British, by the United Kingdom, Gandhi would not have had the same kind of axe to grind, I'm sure, against, like in terms of what happens in India. But he still might have turned it to be a political force because of other things that he wanted to see happen, right?
But it's like the leader
Yeah.
of your nation in civilization. Like it doesn't really.
They call him Gandhi, but it doesn't
really
have
connect.
to be Gandhi, right?
Well, it's also he's the leader for like 2,000 years, right?
Right.
Like it doesn't change to a different person.
Exactly.
Like, it's not really doesn't really have any
Yeah.
relationship with the actual person.
Yeah, but it is. And the only reason that they do that is to basically give you we need a simple way to say that the traits that this person embodies is like this famous figure in history, and then that person just basically persists forever. And I like this idea of saying that you can have a person who's like that. That this is like, Gandhi can be in charge of Spain, and it makes sense because you could have someone with that kind of outlook leading what's going on.
I don't
in
think
that
anyone's
case.
going to be doing it that way. Like the way Paul described it, where it's like you can mix and match your favorites of like probably what specific
whatever
like
stats
stats or whatever is likely what's going on there. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think if you make Gandhi in charge of Spain in the game, it's suddenly going to change like anything about him.
No, it wouldn't, right? But it's saying that you're taking those aspects of a leader that is like this and applying them to a country that has these abilities or these
And
specific. Portugal being like going all over the world invading stuff, but it's like, but you put Gandhi in charge of Portugal, and it's like, okay, so now we have a slightly different outlook for what we're doing.
well, that doesn't make any sense. Portugal doesn't have nukes. What would Gandhi do?
Without nukes, right? Yeah. So yeah.
I mechanically, I feel like that's a feature that is gonna depend on like how it feels playing, if people really like to use it or not. But if it's a thing where you get to pick, people will probably just keep who's supposed to be where.
I mean, that's like, I would assume that like mini games, lots of games where you can customize your character or whatever, it'll probably, if you choose whatever, India, it'll probably default to Gandhi being the leader. Like, it'll probably default to whoever is the normal choice there. But then you can change it if you want. Anyway,
Laserbeak's Fury said that you can still pick the Kong country, but you don't have to have DK as your leader, that kind of thing. And I was like, oh shit, that's a game genre that Nintendo hasn't dipped their toe into yet.
It's true.
They found their way into XCOM, right? They found their way into like all these other things. I'm like, 4X games are something that they haven't done yet, and that's the next thing that they'll do.
Don't know if it is.
I'm thinking about like all the nations that have shown up in like like the world of like Super Mario Wonder,
right?
Is like a separate sort of nation.
Yeah, and we will probably never visit it again.
And there's like the nation that like. The different they kind of often sort of invent a new place with like a new ruler that is in trouble.
Delfino Island and New Donk City and like all these different
all of these
places
we've never visited again so far.
But they all exist, and so therefore you could set up a whole like world-spanning map and have like different leaders of different nations.
I mean, just like Super Mario Galaxy.
Yeah.
This is a thing
Super
a
Mario
fan
Galaxy
would do.
3. Boom.
This is a thing a fan would do. This is not a thing a Nintendo would do.
Anyway, I thought that was I thought that was an interesting take on it, and it'll be cool to see what they do with it, and that hitting that balance between, because of course there is a tendency in these these kind of the sort of 4X games, there is a tendency to go either hard into, being super complicated to sort of appeal to that existing fan base.
Yep.
Or to go the other way and be like, you can play it on your tablet.
Yeah.
And it's got, microtransactions and energy and everyone in that, like, also it's like everyone hates it, but it makes a lot of money.
It has a tech tree that looks like Charlie Brown's Christmas tree. Like,
yeah. And it's like, so hopefully they can kind of thread the needle there and keep it going, because Civilization is a game with a long and storied history. And from what I understand, Civ 6 does a quite good job of continuing it. Anyway. The other one that I did want to point out that came out of Gamescom, good old P.D. Molyneux is back.
Good. Right.
Yeah.
He's got a new God type game, what are called God game, which I think he effectively,
that's his phrasing, yeah.
he effectively invented the genre and also kind of killed the genre.
Yeah, it's true.
His game is called Masters of Albion.
Mention the promise, because we all need to know
Yes.
what we're up against.
An open world full of combat, choices, mysteries, and story.
Okay.
I like that.
Well, that's pretty.
Choices, mysteries, and story are like 3 different things.
You don't get a choice of your mysteries.
So, Molyneux, the whatever, the honeymoon period for Peter Molyneux is long over at this
Look, if
point.
he'd stopped calling Wolf, then maybe we'd believe him.
Well, there's the thing about this that I think is, I haven't read the article about this. I've looked at the screenshots and that was about it. And I was just, because I was initially, because that's the thing, you run right into it. And I'm like, Populous was one of those, that's his first game, or not his first game, but that's the one that his breakout hit. And it's like, Populous is one of those things that you're like, wow, this is a really interesting idea for a game. I don't really know what I'm less than a teenager and I don't really know what I'm doing here. It's an interesting idea, yada, yada, yada. People who are a little older are, grokking it better and they're enjoying this game. And so that we create like all these other things, this idea of this singular auteur who, has this grand vision. And then the thing is, with the growth of that, of course, then the internet came along and is very good at deflating the windbag. And when a lot of people want to be excited about Black and White, and Black and White, to all understanding, is that Black and White was a good game. Like, it was an interesting game, but it wasn't the fucking be all end all. Like,
it was fine. Yeah,
like that he was making it to be. And then Goddess, which I played on my iPad 3, because I was like, I want to try this. I want to see what this is. I'm like, this is not bad, until I get to points where I'm like, now I'm soft locked in the game and I can't do anything else
right.
anymore.
I remember you being very angry.
I was
about
so
that.
mad because I'm playing this game and it's like I think it had microtransactions tacked onto it too, and I'm like, I'm not paying to do more things, but also I can't do anything else.
You literally, I don't think having microtransactions would have helped you with anything either, because of how soft locked you got.
It was just so it was
weird.
Like, this is broken and I don't want to restart because I spent all this time doing things, and I just if the idea is that he's now like, we've created a proper God game and I am contrite and I'm not going to go to my way to make it be the best game that everyone's going to want to play for the rest of their lives, then that's great. That is a lesson that could have been learned years ago.
Well, that's the problem, right? It's not the fact that he's made games that are flawed.
Yeah.
I mean, the NFT thing, bleh. But there's nothing wrong with making a game that has an interesting aspect to it, but maybe it's flawed or maybe it's not that great. But when you have a person who repeatedly comes out and promises the world every single time, to the dismay of the people working on the game.
Yeah.
What happens is that follows with you, because now I haven't even read the article and I assume immediately all these things that I've already understood.
And so it's like, I was talking to some people about this, and as somebody who reports on this stuff and not somebody who is, in a position to be affected by the things he says in terms of, having to do extra work or whatever.
Sure, yeah.
In some ways, especially in the past, I found Peter Molyneux's habit of what I would call public speculation, where journalists would ask him whether a feature would be in a game that he's making, and he'd go yes, that would be a great thing to have. And so that would be interpreted as that's going to be in the game.
Yeah.
And he just could not stop doing that.
Yeah.
And to my mind, it reminded me a little bit of especially the early stuff with Sean Murray of Hello Games did No Man's Sky. That same kind of thing happened where the people would ask him about, stuff like, can I meet up with other people in the game? Mm-hmm. And he'd be like, yes, but that was aspirational. He's like, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
We should do that. Mm-hmm. The difference is that, Hello Games has worked for the last 10 years to actually fulfill the promise of No Man's Sky. You can meet up with other people. When it first came out, you could not. Now you can. And whereas Peter Molyneux just kind of does that, drops the game, moves on to overpromising the next thing, and it becomes less endearing over time as it happens more and more.
Yeah.
Peter Molyneux is the prime example of being a streamer and why you shouldn't just say things, because all that, and the No Man's Sky thing as well, all that really ever showed me was when you say, yeah, maybe we could do that, or that's a good idea, or whatever, nobody remembers the modifiers to your sentence, for one thing. And for another, you're kind of doing a promise. And it gets to the point where if you say things like, if we get to this thing, blank, people might remember the if, they might not.
Yeah.
But then when you start switching your thing to, well, when we get to this thing, because maybe you're not thinking about how you're phrasing stuff, you've now told the audience that you're probably working on it, even if you're not.
Yeah. There is a tenet of improv that is making a promise to the audience and that's a very that's a thing where it's like when you're doing a scene and you set something up as a story beat or as a character beat, like something that's very obviously this is going to be a plot point. You might have just mentioned it offhand, but what you've actually done is you've invented a plot point that the audience is now waiting to see that particular piece resolved. And so the idea of when you make a promise to the audience, you have to be mindful of, I've said a thing, I know, and I'm bad at this because I get off a stream and I completely forget what I talked about. But when you're doing a performance, you have to, or just even a scene, you have to know that it's like, I better resolve this for the satisfaction of the people who are watching this. It has to be resolved in some way, even if it's like an offhand resolution. Everything on stream has weight, right? It's like no matter what it is that you do with something, it all has weight. So that whenever you're doing something, you remember that, I have this thing. I put it on a shelf. I take it off the shelf.
When it comes down to it, like I don't blame the audience for misinterpreting things. In a sense, I don't think it's great if a journalist is rewriting a thing and taking out your modifier words or doing a thing that's like, they're definitely promising this. That I take some issue with because that's just putting out bad information.
Like there's a certain amount of like the sort of hype train, but that's not a new concept.
Yeah.
No.
And
I do think the fault of that lies more on the person who lets the words out.
Like there was definitely, for instance, in the case of No Man's Sky, there was definitely promises made, and somebody in the chat was saying, the multiplayer thing wasn't aspirational. That was a feature.
Yeah, yeah.
And it turned out not to be the case when it came out. And there's definitely promises and made that didn't happen. But the whole thing was compounded by the fact that there was this big marketing push by Sony and by things that didn't quite understand what the game was, and there was there was sort of the Sean Murray and the developers are certainly not blameless in terms of promising things that weren't there, but it was definitely, compounded by the culture in which it was put out in.
And that's just kind of like a thing where it's like, here's some things where it's like you've made some promises on purpose that maybe you weren't thinking about. But then because within video games, we have people who want to see everything while it's being developed because they're very hyped for the thing. And they get mad when they can't see it right away and they just want to see what it looks like now. And people are like, we don't want to show it to you right now because it's a lot of blocks.
Right.
And you'll be angry that it's blocks, even though it's not going to be blocks at the end, right?
Yeah.
But in the ramp up for your game, because you still have to do some PR and some promotion, you might say, there's this thing we're working on, and then that thing doesn't work, and you have to take it out, or games get delayed, or like those things. And those things are already like built-in disappointments waiting to happen. But you have to do some of it, which is like, at least that's something you can kind of be like, okay, well, that happens, it's disappointing, which is, why add in the other complication of, hey, I just said a bunch of things, I hope they can happen.
Yeah. Anyway, one of the aspects of this,
Of Masters of Albion.
a Master of Albion,
Okay.
is that it is self-funded, which is interesting in the sense that, I mean, if you recall in the last little while, Peter Molyneux's various games recently have had a variety of funding methods that have all been like kind of like the 22 cans games that he did. There was the what's inside the box stuff Curiosity where people were like paying microtransactions to click on stuff.
We were all disappointed by the ending
and all the stuff. And then of course his most recent game before this was NFT based. Now how much that was like, I guess that was, I only say how much that was Peter Molyneux in the sense that of like how little he's being associated with it now. Mm-hmm. He's sort of deliberately backing away from it, but it did eventually come out. The game, I forget even what it was called.
I don't think anyone remembers the name of it. They're just like, oh, that NFT
I'm sure
game.
someone in chat will mention it.
No, not Goddess. That was a different one.
That was something else.
And
didn't he call it like Godus or something? Or was it
like
Goddess?
Similar? I can't remember how.
It was called Legacy?
Okay.
Anyway, so there was an NFT based game. People invested a ton of money into it. It was kind of right in the good spot for making a bunch of money off NFT stuff.
For people buying NFTs.
Yes, not for people actually making money who aren't the people selling the NFT game, because of course NFTs aren't worth anything ever. But they're worth money to the people who are selling them originally and scamming things. And so there's an argument when you say this game is self-funded that it actually is just funded from the previous the NFTs from the previous game.
Right.
I mean, that is how things happen usually. It's like if you make a bunch of money from one project previously, and then you go to start another project, you probably use the funds.
Which is true.
Like, that's. Did that game come out?
It did eventually come out, I believe, in some form anyway.
But now we have this other thing.
So I guess what self-funded means in this case is he isn't running like another Kickstarter for it.
Okay.
So
I suckered a lot of people.
The previous game was the crowdfunding for this game in some ways.
Right.
Anyway. Which I love the Ars Technica article about this. The recent NFT game that attracted $54 million in player pre-investment. And then there's a link to, it did actually launch on Steam in some form last year with a link to a tweet that is now gone.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Get used to that, by the way.
Anyway, there was I was just trying to think if there was other Gamescom things that I thought was interesting. Borderlands 4 has been, which was I believe technically announced last week, but
on the heels of the remarkably successful Borderlands movie, they have announced Borderlands 4.
I mean, the amount of success it has been remarked upon. Yes. I guess that is.
Oh man, I'm going to use that forever. I'm remarkably successful. People remark on me all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we know. So that was probably always part of the. It was probably always part of the marketing mix on this one, is to get people hyped about the going to the movie and being so excited about that, to be like, hey, and guess what? A new game is coming out, and they're like, well, we're already this deep into the marketing, so announce the new game.
Borderlands isn't like a game I've played or had any interest in, but there's 4 of them, there's a fourth one coming. Isn't Borderlands a game that people are generally excited about?
Yeah.
I mean, movies, sure. No, like we don't have to talk about that.
People were very. The
people liked Borderlands.
The general consensus is the first 2 games were great.
Okay.
The third game was pretty disappointing. They also did a spin-off pre-sequel, as in like a prequel.
Okay.
Game, which I quite enjoyed. I didn't play the third one. I did play the first 2 in the pre-sequel, and I quite enjoyed them. I mean, it's story-wise, they're not that complicated, which is why the movie, having such problems was annoying.
If the first 2 were considered good, and the third one was meh, that means there's still plenty of hope for the fourth one to be good.
Yeah.
Because you haven't ruined it yet. Unless the movie was that bad that it superseded all of video games.
The concern, I think, is that the trajectory that the third game put Gearbox on is not what, like, the suspicion, I guess, the presumption is that it's going to be more of Borderlands 3 in terms of like it was mostly like the story and stuff. People were not that interested about Borderlands 3.
Isn't there another
Mechanically,
story
I think
that's
it was
related
fine.
to Gearbox in this list?
Sorry?
Isn't there another story that's related to Gearbox in this list?
Well, this is sort of related. Yeah. The reason why this is kind of interesting, Borderlands 4, is that Borderlands 3 was an Epic Game Store exclusive.
Yes.
In fact, it was one of the very early Epic Game Store exclusives. And at the time, good old Randy Pitchford.
Oh, what did Randy say?
Was very, very bullish on the concept of the Epic Game Store.
To the point where he was...
Presumably because they had just given him millions of dollars.
I'd be happy about that too. Yeah.
Sure.
Shit. So I think he had... I don't have the exact quote, but it was basically it was his idea that Steam was essentially doomed.
Yeah, what does it say here?
It was going to die in 5 to 10 years or something.
Yeah, it was like, I wouldn't be surprised if in 5 to 10 years Steam is
Now, he didn't say that he knew for a fact that it was going to happen. He just was like, I wouldn't be surprised if this happened. I'm like, sure. I wouldn't be surprised if my ass fell off, I guess.
His whole thing was Epic was coming
Steam,
yeah, Steam may look like a dying store in 5 to 10 years thanks to enhanced competition from Epic and others.
Yeah, his whole thing was that if Epic was pushing really hard on exclusives, that gamers go to where the games are, not necessarily to specific storefronts. And that I think even later in that article, he kind of he blames Epic for not going hard enough or something. I don't understand why he cares.
Other than...
Well, they take a cut is the idea, right?
Well, sure.
Steam takes a bigger cut than Epic, so they want
But, I don't think he's wrong in the aspect that if there's a game you really want to play, especially if, you have 2 PC storefronts that are just things you're going to download and use...
Pitchford now says Epic did not successfully press its advantage to take a significant chunk of Steam's dominant market power. He says, famously, Steam does very little to earn the massive cut they take and continues its effective monopoly in the West, while would-be competitors with much more developer-friendly models continue to shoot themselves in the foot. The industry gives Steam their monopoly because publishers are afraid to take the risk to support more developer and publisher-friendly stores. It is very interesting that there's a huge amount of opportunity in the PC gaming space for retail disruption, but nobody seems to make it happen.
Look, if you list on Steam, you can still list in other places.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so
Steam doesn't do exclusives then the same way.
So you could literally say, I'm going to list my game on Steam and I'm going to list my game on Epic Games Store. If Epic Games Store is like, yeah, we'll totally allow you to do that.
I would also suggest that I feel like if Randy Pitchford talked to his deployment team, I feel like Steam is one of those. I feel like Steam is one of those systems, kind of like app stores for for both the Android store and the iOS app store.
Yeah.
That it's like, it's so sort of ubiquitous that it's like, what are these guys doing? They're just taking.
There is an attitude.
They're taking 30%,
and they don't do anything. They sit on their hands all day because they don't need to do anything. Because hey, I click on the App Store icon, it works for me every time. There must be no maintenance that you have to do behind the scenes.
Just as a non-developer, as a user, the fact that the ease of use that Steam provides, remote play. So any game on Steam, I can hit a button and it is, it not only is sending that video to other people, but it is locking into my controllers and sending those feeds back and forth, all this stuff. All that developers just get for free. Like that just is part of Steam. They they don't have to do anything to make that happen.
Yeah.
Like there's a ton of stuff that Steam does. I'm not saying they're the best. I don't know if they're the best.
Maybe they're not.
But I know that they're not just doing nothing. And so I think they're probably they're the idea that Steam does very little to earn the massive cut they take. I mean, they're probably their take could be smaller. People would like it better if their take were smaller.
I mean, everybody would like that, though, right?
Sure.
Like that's the idea.
Wasn't Borderlands 3 the game? Was that game kickstarted? Wasn't that was that not
Borderlands? No,
Borderlands 3 wasn't. I know there was like some games that
there was
were
a game
kickstarted
that was kickstarted
that
and they
ended up
swapped
becoming Epic's exclusives, and people were really upset because then when they had done the Kickstarter, they were expecting to get Steam codes.
Yeah.
And stuff. I know that was a thing. I know that there have been stories in the past about Epic telling people if they didn't go exclusive with them, then they couldn't be on the Epic Game Store, which I think they've mostly done to indies. So, I don't think any of these places are great in some ways.
I need to get this off my chest.
Okay.
Every time we bring up this issue, I always need to get it off my chest because I always feel like I'm having to say the same thing. Not because I'm trying to tell you guys anything different, but it's just like I need to express this to the world, is that supply chain is harder than you think. E-commerce supply chain is ridiculously difficult. Yeah. Like even though it seems like, these are all solved problems, you're dodging patents these days as well. So there's that to take into account too. It's not a call the programmers and they'll wave a magic wand and all this shit will work. Every large company that has its own eShop, right? That has their own like app store, that your Apple and Google and Nintendo and Sony and Xbox. And Steam has theirs, and then there's the Epic one now too. And there's all these alt stores that are opening up for all these other platforms and stuff. And it's like all of those have problems they have to solve that being solved by volunteers is not an easy ask. You can't just say to people, because like Linux has this thing of, like there's people who work for Debian who manage like making packages and doing all that kind of stuff too, right? But not even all of those people, I'm sure, are volunteers for just one distribution. There's probably some people who like who are getting paid part-time to work on that, or getting paid full-time to work on that by a company who's like, we want that.
Most of the big Linux distros have a core of
paid people who have to organize things or work on the specific elements that are like, these are supposed to be the reasons why you want this. And it's like, I would love to see Steam's breakdown of the 30% or whatever it is they take from you or the different deals they have with everybody. The chunk that we take from you, here's what this goes into. Like, knowing that it's like, this is the chunk of revenue that we make. Here's the piece that we peel off for general revenue. Like maybe 20% of that, numbers out of my ass.
Yeah.
But 1/5 of that gets peeled off to go to general revenue. That it's like, this helps to support the rest of the company because this is a place to make money, because we are obviously about making money and profits. And then the rest of that can be split into these chunks of, this is the piece that goes to the people who maintain and manage the Steam client itself. This is the chunk that goes to people who maintain the compatibility stuff that goes with like putting playable things on Linux and do whatever. And chopping these things up to say, here's how everything kind of breaks down. it would be so helpful to have that for Steam and for Apple and for Nintendo and Sony and Xbox and for the for Google Play stuff. It would be so handy to have that. But we don't get that shit for Walmart.
I mean,
right? We don't get it for any other like brick and mortar store to say, here's how this stuff breaks down. Because when you start nickel and diming to that extent, there will always be somebody who comes back to yell about the fact that you shouldn't be taking that $5 and using it for pens. You should be using it for pencils. There will always be somebody out there who is mad about your choices. And it's like, we as a company,
it's kind of
funge a bit of that in how we do our own merch fulfillment and stuff too, because you can't get down to the nitty gritty.
Well, you can't convince your audience of
that I'm making a choice that is appropriate.
Let's just say that there's like 5 people that you have to convince of this thing.
Yeah.
Is it going to be at least one person who doesn't agree with you, no matter what you say, no matter what your facts or your statistics show off?
Yeah.
And now when you amplify that to a lot of people, especially with the internet and armchair blanks of any stripe, you just get people who are nitpicking your thing, and you feel like you've like provided an explanation, so people should leave you alone now, and that's just not how anybody works.
It's something that, you know, obviously here at Loading Ready Run, Bound Trousers Media, we deal with a lot of, you know, for instance, right now we're broadcasting on Twitch.
Yeah.
We put stuff on YouTube.
Which you can back us in both places, by the way.
Which, you know, Twitch obviously shows ads. They take a cut of subscription revenue. And YouTube shows ads and takes a cut of the ad revenue.
Yeah.
And there is that, like, a lot of creators get very concerned about that.
Yes.
Very legitimately. I guess in some ways, I think it's because, you know, we've been around for so long, and we did actually host videos on our own website for first little while. And I understand, like, I don't understand the technical details, but I know enough to know how incredibly difficult it is. I mean, YouTube is one thing, but Twitch, like, live streaming infrastructure is ridiculously complicated. And so, like, you know, in some ways I see, rather than, you know, the sort of like, we're working for Twitch.
Yeah.
In some ways I see the cut that Twitch takes of our sub revenue and stuff as us just like paying Twitch for the service of running the live stream, which there's no way we could do.
Yeah, keeping it functional and up, and a thing where you can click a button and say, and I'm online, as opposed to like something has happened to our TSP server, and now we have to have 3 hours of fixing it, and all the streams today are no longer going to happen. All the bandwidth it's going to cost to do that kind of thing. It's like, there's something very nice about paying a company. And we don't have to pay Twitch. Twitch pays us, right? Because you guys are already putting money into Twitch by backing us as well.
Yeah, so, Twitch could have gone with a service that was like, you have to pay to be online to stream.
Yeah.
Doing so would cut off basically all the people who don't get, like, only get 1 or 2 people who want to participate in that.
It's true.
So anyway, small rant about infrastructure stuff. But.
Though speaking of Twitch, they're upping mobile prices on iOS and Android apps if you subscribe through the apps. So subscribe through desktop if you can.
Yeah, for like all those things.
Yeah, I mean, just for everything.
Yeah, it's
also Patreon.
Yeah, so don't subscribe through the app on Patreon at this point. Go to the website and subscribe instead. Please do that. Please go to the website. Go to patreon.com/loadingreadyrun and subscribe there.
I love
do that
whole thing with Patreons, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
The universal response I've seen from everybody is Patreon had an app.
Yeah.
Yep, that was news to me too.
Yeah.
Anyway. That all started about Randy Pitchford talking about stuff. But anyway, the end result, by the way, of all that is that Borderlands 4 is on Steam.
Sorry, Socratic Method. The app price increases not just for iOS, it's also for Android. It's basically any mobile device.
Because Android, like Google Play, takes a cut.
Also takes a
Do
similar
not forget
cut.
that.
You can be bad at Apple all you want, but
Yeah.
it is going to be a rise in price on both systems. You might as well just go through desktop.
So in Canada, how much was a tier 1 sub?
I think it's $7.99.
It was $7.99 Canadian to buy a tier 1 sub.
I mean, it still is, I think.
Right. But soon it's going to be $10.49.
$10.49 on the app.
Canadian. So that
Mobilely.
and that means that
It should still be $7.99.
in other places in all over the world, in order to keep pace with the international exchange of money and whatnot, you're going to pay different. Your euro price is going up, and it's going to be slightly different, and your Norwegian kroner is going to go up and be slightly different. Like it's going to everywhere. They're all going up. Don't worry. 40 different places in the world, I think, they're all seeing rises in the price.
Yeah, the email I got said 40 countries. I think there's some tweets from people who have been trying to collect information of what the different ones are in different places. But because we're in Canada, the only information I was given was the Canadian one.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah. Let's.
let's move on to some non-Gamescom stuff.
Yeah.
How about some stuff about Pokemons?
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
for instance, there's new Pokemon SD cards,
I mean, these are cute.
Micro SD cards.
micro SD cards. What I like about these is that they're like, they have little pictures of Pokemon on them that are connected to like the size. So like, Snorlax is the big sleepy guy. So he's got the big 1 terabyte card. And the little Pikachu. There should be like a Pichu one that's like 60.
128.
That's like 16.
Oh yeah,
I
just
don't
really
think
tiny.
I don't think they make any of these lower than 256 for. Oh no, wait, maybe they do the 128.
So
Although this picture is kind of deceptive because
they're all
micro
the
SD
same size.
cards are all the same size. But
And speaking of sizes, though, this I think is also the thing. Think about how big a micro SD card actually is. Like it's the size of your thumbnail, essentially, right? So this is real tiny. Like so, it's nice to be able to see them rendered and big and whatever, and that's cool.
I think the color coding is probably more useful
Yes.
than the pictures.
Why haven't they done that until now? Like that's all the Nintendo ones are the same one. Like the Nintendo Wii one, or not the Wii, the ones that came out for the Wii U and the Switch are all color coded as well, because they're all like have a mushroom on one size and they have you can see them all here.
The Nintendo ones are they've done some other ones before. I think there's a Zelda 1 terabyte one that's black, and the Nintendo labeled ones have always been different colors.
Swank.
It's so good. You can tell at a glance that it's like if I know that I have if I buy a bunch and I need to be changing them out and whatever, like all of our micro SD cards are either black or they're gold because we bought the SanDisk Extremes because they're the fastest writing
Right,
ones.
they use the color for whatever the branding is.
Exactly, but the sizes you have to then pull up and see. Is this a 256? Is this a 128? Like, it would be so nice to just, if SanDisk standardized on like a certain size was a certain color, like, or at least was half the card was a certain color or something, and they did that over and over, I bet what would happen is you'd get a lot of other people who produce them well to also start doing the same thing, where it's like, oh, well, we know that skim milk is supposed to have a blue top, and we know that 2% milk is supposed to have a pink top, and then everyone and homogenized milk has a yellow top, and it's like, you start to see people lean into that more and more.
I think what you'll find is actually the competitors will be like, the red one is 1 terabyte, so the 1 terabyte ones cards look bigger if you point them red.
Right.
Let's just make all our cards red
Yeah.
So
and ruin it for everyone.
hear me out.
Shit, you're not wrong. Oh my god.
Stickers, or your own
Yeah.
kind of labeling.
Nail polish, usually a good one.
I mean, we write on cards with like silver Sharpies
Yeah.
usually
To give
to
them
give them numbers.
Yeah.
But
These are very cute. I like these.
I like the problem is I like the Gengar one more, but I would want the 1 terabyte, which is the Snorlax.
I like the I actually like the,
which is funny because it's going to be stuck in a device the entire time. It's not like I get to look at it.
Right.
Yeah, I like the Animal Crossing one. That is the kind of the light green, mint green, or not mint green, but leaf green thing.
Now, what would be good? On the Switch, there's like a little bit of info on the for the Joy-Cons that it knows what color they are.
Yeah, it's
See,
fun.
that would be good if there was just like a bit.
What if
on the SanDisk thing,
right.
a special little thing, so that the Switch knows what, and so then when it shows up on the UI, it actually shows up with the little Snorlax picture.
Hear me out. The Switch has the most boring themes in the world, black and white. But if I got the Gengar card and I stuck it in, it made the interface purple and put Gengar's face on it.
The problem is that
so
if
what
you
you're
need
saying,
a really big card.
So what you're saying is that you want it to be like a microtransaction to buy a UI.
I would like a Gengar theme.
I feel like we've gone the wrong. I feel like this is going the wrong way.
Probably.
The 3DS did a lot of themes that you could download and stuff too, and it is a little. I agree with the idea of it would be very cool if you could, if by buying one of these, if you unlocked Pokemon themes that came on the card, so you could choose which one you want to be. But yeah, Paul, I love the idea of a little Snorlax face or a little tealish blue to be your card has been inserted and in the corner it's kind of glowing with that little that color to show that you have a card living in your Switch and has a little Snorlax face on it. If it's this one, that's kind of great. I love that idea.
There's just a little hidden partition on the card.
Yeah, that way you know which one you have.
It would probably mess things up, but whatever.
I mean, see, Paul, my profile has a Gengar plush with a hat on it right now, and
so Gengar is your brand, is what you're saying.
He's my favorite gremlin. He's so happy all the time.
It's not even your favorite Pokemon, but he's just the...
Gengar and Rowlet are friends, so they can be equal.
That's fair.
Rowlet is still best round bird, but...
Anyway, that's good.
What else we got going on here?
Please don't tell me you've changed your favorite Pokemon. It's going to make everything complicated.
Baldur's Gate 3. I don't know why I would be talking about a different Baldur's Gate game.
Yeah.
Baldur's Gate 3 is
a year old.
And they've said that there isn't going to be a big DLC update for it.
Okay.
That's not news. They've said that a while ago.
Yeah.
But they've kept tweaking it and adding things. We've talked about some of the additions.
The game's clearly not done yet.
And
they keep cooking on it.
Well, I mean, you were while you were playing it, they changed and added stuff in the middle of your gameplay.
They added epilogues.
Yeah.
Which honestly, I'm grateful for because I hear the game just ended.
So, in the topic of endings, in September they're going to add a bunch of new endings for basically if you do evil things. So right now. Right now, apparently, the evil. If you are evil, you don't get there isn't that much variation in the ending. But
if you finish good, there's different ways that good can play out.
Yeah.
So they decided to be a little more fair in saying that. Well, if you're evil, it could work this way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Now, I'm not going to. I don't want to. These videos that there's some sample some sort of teaser things, but they're all spoiler warning, so I don't want to actually show them to you. But yes, they've been working on stuff for. So I guess that means you have to do another playthrough, but be mean to everybody.
I mean, I wasn't mean to everybody in the game, but I was really mean to them as a person while I was watching them move around. Specifically mean to Gale because he kept falling into things and dying. And honestly, for a group of adventurers, every time they started going up a ladder, they sounded really like they were not in shape.
Now, if I remember some of the things you were talking about when you were doing your playthrough, the ending that the fans really demand is the cheese wheel ending.
Yeah. I'd love to do a whole playthrough as a cheese wheel.
When will you do that, Larion? This story, this is one of these stories that sort of came and went and came back a little bit. Black Myth Wukong is a new game that just came out not too long ago. It's sort of a Souls-like-ish thing.
Yeah, Adam streamed it.
Yeah,
a
apparently
couple times
it's
now, and it looks fun.
yeah, it's something they've hit like 10 million.
Yeah, it's very
sales and stuff. So they've been
Journey
doing really well.
to the West looking with the
Yeah.
monkey, and
I've
that's about most of what I know about it. I saw a giant frog briefly while I was watching Adam play.
I do have I have a fondness for all the different variations of Journey to the West, which seems to be like the main Chinese folktale. Not to stereotype or anything, but
I think it's the one that we tend to know about.
yeah. It seems it's such a large part of sort of Chinese folk legend that like a ton of other stories are all actually secretly Journey to the West.
I mean, I like what Wicker Guide says. It is Chinese King Arthur, and it's like I can kind of understand how that works. Where it's like, oh, it's a thing you can play with over and over and over again.
Yeah, and it's like, basically, like Dragon Ball and a bunch of other things are also sort of references to it. And different things. Anyway, there's some weird stuff that came out when the sort of previews came out. They sent previews out to journalists and to sort of influencer streamer types, and they sent out some directives with the previews.
Sure, that's not
which is
uncommon.
not that uncommon.
No.
But apparently they sent different directives to journalists as opposed to streamers.
Okay.
The journalist ones were pretty standard
Don't spoil the game.
about,
Don't
things to do.
Talk about past chapter 2.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
The guidelines for streamers were stuff like can't insult other influencers or players.
Seems pretty standard.
Don't use any offensive language or humor.
I could understand that.
Yeah.
Don't include politics, violence, nudity, feminist propaganda, fetishization, or any content that instigates negative discourse.
I'm sorry, what was buried in the middle there?
Don't use trigger words such as quarantine, isolation, or COVID-19.
Okay.
Don't discuss any content related to China's games industry policies, opinions, news, or etc.
Or even this policy we're giving you, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was put down at the bottom.
I mean, for one thing, just at like a very quick level, not discussing violence in a sold game seems like it's gonna be a weird restriction.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
But yes, so they obviously. So the weird part about this is that this was posted. Like someone was like, "Hey, check this out. This is what they're being told not to talk about."
Yeah, because I don't think they gave this to every streamer either. Is
And then-
kind of part of the weirdness.
And then there was some sort of one of these. It was one of these things, and then there was a bunch of backlash, being like, "No, like
Because
I
I didn't get
have
that."
my agreement right here.
Yeah.
They did not do that.
Yeah.
You're just making this up."
Right.
And then that's when it turned out that like journalists and streamers and different people were getting different agreements, which obviously
again
complicated
is
things. But it
actually
turned
not
some
weird.
people were definitely getting this.
It's not weird to give different groups of different people different agreements if they're doing different things with your stuff.
Also, I'll get contacted. Jesus, you should see my inbox. It's a mess. I get so many. There are so many PR companies out there pushing little games and all sorts of stuff, and we seem to be signed up to all of them. And so I will get I'll get 3 or 4 different companies contacting me to be like, please do a Raid Shadow Legends, like that kind of thing. Like Plarium's got fingers in all sorts of PR companies.
That's the fun thing when you have like multiple PR companies
all trying to push the same
all
game.
pushing the same game, but not talking to each other.
Yeah.
That they've already contacted you.
It's a very weird feeling because you never really know. It's like, well, who am I actually supposed to deal with, or like that kind of thing. And I could totally understand if that was that kind of idea. That's like, did one specific PR company say this is the agreement because this is our standard boilerplate, and it went out to 30% of streamers who received offers for or have taken them up on the offers for this thing? Who knows? And yeah, it's very weird. It's it doesn't sound like they have determined that that is the case. That because not the company that makes a game will usually not be the one that is sending out requests for you to play it.
They can be.
They can be,
on
definitely.
top of a PR company.
Yeah.
Sometimes, but typically that's not what they're doing. They hire out for that kind of thing.
By the way, I love in Polygon's coverage of this, they have, given the content of the game, the guidance that creators shouldn't discuss violence is befuddling. Towards the end of the release date trailer, a character who appears to be half person, half crab crushes a human skull with his hand.
Ah,
Yeah.
Don't talk
No.
about violence.
I don't think there's been any explanation, official explanation as to why these things were
I don't
said.
think.
It's
Yeah,
mostly
as
speculation,
far as I can,
what people are saying, or they're like,
yeah, as far as I can tell, there hasn't been an update on this particular story about that. But yeah,
yeah, and we're at this point we're probably not going to get one. But yeah, I think speculation has been things like there was some stuff about sexism in the workplace.
back
or,
in so
like,
yeah,
quite a while ago.
yeah, there was some so I guess I guess that's part of it is that there were IGN apparently did a report that this company was one of the people involved in a report about sexism in the gaming development community in China.
And also because this is a Chinese developed game.
I believe so.
Some of
yes.
those things, like we don't talk about COVID, we don't talk about these politics. It's very Chinese focused in what it's asking streamers not to do. And I don't I don't know who they were giving these codes out to. Some of this stuff is like, oh yeah, why would we bring that up at all? Why did you say that? But there are streamers who talk about that stuff on a regular basis as well.
Yeah. So, anyway, but as this article said, it's currently got 81. Well, at least when this article was written, it was 81 on Metacritic. So it's apparently it's good, a good game.
Yeah, I've heard people who played the game have had fun playing the game. But
maybe you won't want to play it on stream.
just don't stream anymore. It's just easier on everybody's
Ooh,
site.
is this Roblox news?
Yeah.
Great.
It's not like a.
What'd
it's
they
not
do
a
now?
It's not a
Roblox-focused.
horrible exploitation scam.
Oh,
At least.
I like that.
Well, no, I mean Roblox is a
fresh.
horrible exploitation scam, but the news that we're talking about is not about that.
No,
Okay.
it is not about. It's not like a new exploitation scam. I
Yeah.
guess it's just
Roblox hasn't changed in the regard of that system.
Dress to Impress, which is a Roblox fashion game, has just come out with a the Brat update
because it's Brat Summer.
because it's Brat Summer.
Right.
Everyone's really into sausage all of a
There's
sudden. I
not-
don't get it.
The brats.
Yeah,
Those are brats.
slightly
Oh,
different.
I thought
Yeah.
we called them brats.
Yeah, I know. Apparently, I've been saying
we've
it
been
wrong all
saying
this
it wrong
time
this
too.
whole
Yeah,
time?
they're
Oh.
brats. Yeah.
Okay.
You have 8 days left in your brat summer, so
Yeah,
And then what happens?
I guess we pivot to PSL. Pumpkin Spice Latte.
yeah.
I guess it would be.
Anyway, DTI's got this new brat summer thing. Oh, look.
Which apparently is. It looks like I don't know if it's actually strictly marketed marketed as such, but it looks like brats as in
The dolls?
the old dolls.
I was gonna say, who are these taffy women?
No, that's
Ghost in the
what's her
Shell.
name? Susie Spaghetti or something? What's that doll's name? Spaghetti,
Betty Spaghetti?
Betty Spaghetti.
Okay, that would make sense.
You asked who the noodles were.
That's the Taffy Women.
Taffy Women.
Yeah.
Oh, right. I guess that's Stretch Armstrong.
Yeah, he's kind of a taffy thing. No,
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Intron Depot. Anyway, go ahead, Paul.
There's a great way back. There's a great Onion News Network video talking about are Bratz dolls giving young girls a unrealistic expectation of how big their head should be.
Jeffrey Rowland did an overcompensating. There's this line that sticks with me where Jeffrey Rowland did an overcompensating comic that there were like two people who were Bratz people, in like he was drawing them in his comic and they were having a conversation, and he gets to the very end, he's just kind of like watching them. At the end he's like watching them, but he keeps getting closer and closer, and finally one turns around like, excuse me, what's your problem? And he's like, what kind of birds are you? And it was just like, I'm never gonna forget that line in relation to Bratz. So yeah,
The only Bratz dolls that I've seen that I've thought are actually mildly terrifying, because I mean everything that's small can be terrifying, just because of how fast it can skitter. But like you can get, at least at the time that I was working retail, you could get Bratz dolls that were like 3 feet tall, so they're like the same like height as like the child that you're buying for.
Ooh,
and they're proportional.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, those should definitely not exist.
Then you take them and you make them face the wall and you stand them in the corner.
What, like the crying children we all grew up with?
Like,
no.
See, and you say like we all grew up with, and I didn't, but
And then you walk into the room and their head
There's
is
no
face
way your mom
backwards
didn't have crying children in the corner.
not when I was a child. When I was in my 20s and we moved into a new house and she bought one of these things and she stood it in, like, and I went and I took it and I turned around, it had no face, and I'm like, well, that's even more unsettling.
Well, yes, because there's
I asked her
They're
about that, and
creepy.
she's like, isn't it cute? And I'm like,
No.
it's a crying child doll. Like, it's meant to represent a crying child that stands there and is
And stands in the
silently
corner.
sobbing the whole time.
Yes.
And it has no face, Mom. This is weird. I think it is weird. And she says, oh, you don't know. And I'm like,
no,
I guess I don't know.
they've always been weird, and they've always been creepy.
guess
They're
I don't know.
essentially Ben Ulmer's nightmare.
I was gonna say that's like, it sounds like that's just the character from like half the games they play on.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's know.
There's so many
Anyway.
scary folk tales about finding the woman without the face, and then she eats you or something, or takes your face. I don't remember what.
Is there still a story here? I'm sorry.
The only thing, just because I'll play Roblox, so
Yeah.
this Dress to be honest, this Dress to Impress game actually seems kind of cool. Like, it's basically what you do is you get given a theme, and then you have 5 minutes to like run around and make an outfit
Oh.
based on that, and then everybody
Okay.
like votes on whose outfit is the
Oh,
best.
so it's like spectators and stuff. That
Yeah,
are,
yeah.
Okay, interesting.
It's kind of a fun. It seems like kind of a cool thing.
Don't we do that at Desert Bus every year?
Yeah, kind of.
Isn't that,
Yeah.
isn't that like the king
Yeah.
walk thing?
That's kind of neat.
Boop, ba-doop, boop, boop. Was there another? Oh yeah, this is cool. Because y'all know I'm a sucker for accessibility stuff in gaming, and Microsoft has just announced a bunch of new accessibility
Hardware?
Hardware, yeah.
Okay.
The adaptive joystick, which amusingly basically looks like a Joy-Con or like a
Nunchuck?
a nunchuck.
It kind of seems it has like a bit of shades of like Logitech PowerPoint presenter.
Yeah. 4 buttons in the front and the 2 additional buttons.
Party in the rear, yeah.
Yeah. And it can be incorporated in different. So this hooks up to, if you recall, the accessible. What's it called? The
round thing? Oh, no,
The
wait.
adaptive
the
controller.
adaptive controller,
Yeah.
which is
Right.
like a piece that can have like a whole bunch of different things
Right, yeah.
plugged into it.
The square.
Looks like a DJ Hero controller,
Yeah.
except those are buttons, I think.
What's super cool is say we have listened to players express a need to have more options for the thumbsticks to customize their play. So
Okay.
we've collaborated with community members charity organizations, and hospitals involved in adaptive gaming and 3D printing to design complementary 3D printing files for adaptive thumbstick toppers. So they're actually making the files available for people to use to do all sorts of different, and presumably you can customize them to whatever your requirements are.
I think those are fantastic. The design is very human. Also, I look at all those flared bases. Anyway, yep.
It's been a while.
Been a while.
Yeah.
You're still the CEO of that weird company, right?
I think I still am, yeah.
Buttplug.io?
I feel so
that'll
bad.
make their day, right? They watch ChillPoint.
Give Q-Dot if you're out there, yeah. Shout out.
Um,
Anyway, that's very cool that you'll
Yeah.
be able to just be like, make your own, and then you can adapt it to what the thing yourself.
Yeah, and it's,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the kind of thing that, you know, Makerverse or Thingiverse or whatever, like people will often make 3D printed things to do that. But the idea that the specs are actually being provided by Microsoft themselves,
Yeah.
I think is a really neat.
Have they given this controller a name?
Well,
Is it just the adaptive controller?
that thing is called the adaptive joystick.
Adaptive joystick.
They're also working with 8BitDo,
Ipido, yeah.
to modify so you know 8BitDo does all sorts of different controllers for all
All
the
sorts
all
of
the different
systems.
all the systems and stuff.
Yeah.
But they're making a special controller, the 8BitDo Lite SE 2.4G wireless controller. Doesn't really trip off the tongue,
No.
but it's got a bunch of stuff for people with limited mobility, low resistance buttons, Hall effect joysticks, and also all the buttons are like the shoulder buttons are actually moved onto the face of the
On the face.
onto the face.
Okay, yeah.
To make it more accessible at the top of the controller, and it has a non-slip silicon part of the bottom to keep it on the. Because this is the idea here. This is be like you have it like on a table, so you
Right.
can access it. So anyway, lots of cool stuff, and I'm happy. I'm happy that this is something that Microsoft has actually been, I would say, sort of pioneering, or at least been at the forefront of for a number of years. I can't imagine that it is a real like big money maker for them.
No.
So I like that they are continuing to push forward in this area, that they're putting this thing. It's slightly unfortunate in that at the same time they've also been like really downplaying the Xbox as a whole. So like hopefully games will, I think all of these controllers work on PC as well.
Yeah.
But in fact, if I recall, they actually have a thing. They have a thing so that the Xbox accessibility thing can work on PlayStation as well. I think they actually deliberately did that. So yay!
Speaking of Xbox,
Yeah.
don't we
Not
have
saying
a terrible thing
not
about
saying
them?
Microsoft is good as a whole, but this is a good thing that they're doing.
No, I meant like, we have another story in regards to Xbox and an indie dev.
Do we have that?
The one for hacks, HAAX.
Is it near the bottom of the dock?
That one.
Oh, yes,
yeah.
right. Right. Yeah, so this is less something Microsoft has done and more something that they didn't do, as in be receptive. So hacks, HAAX, HAAK.
It's a Metroidvania platformer game. It came out in like 2022.
Yeah. Part of it was crowdfunded, and part of it was they were multi-platform release stuff. They were like, we're going to release it on various consoles as well as PC. unfortunately, they have now announced that unfortunately they are not going to be able to release it on Xbox. And which is, one of those things where you go like, what? The whole thing is that Xbox and PC just basically connect to each other really easily.
Since Beach hasn't read this story, I'm sure. No. Why do you think that they can't put out an Xbox version?
I mean, so technically, the PC architecture these days is different, markedly different than what the Xbox Series X and Series S architecture is anyway. So a straight port across does require that you, because it's ARM based, I think, these days. So you can't do a straight port across. It is like a recompile process. I'm sure there's other things involved with that too. If they're saying that because I saw the thing that says it was a nightmare porting process, I have to assume the nightmare part is more bureaucracy and logistics than it is the actual the actual.
Their biggest problem that they've talked about is that they couldn't register an account and then they couldn't get customer service to help them for 14 months.
Like, it's literally the stupidest.
Whoa.
Like, it's...
And they don't, they can't just keep trying.
The MSP bug stopped them from registering an account, and we informed ID at Xbox, which is the, indie channel, about our predicament. They said they were powerless to help. Apparently, it falls outside the scope of their responsibility, and it's like a Microsoft issue. We very much want to share Hack's adventure with more players, but development funds are extremely tight and we can't afford to wait any longer. We deeply regret this outcome. And this feels like, it feels like that the thing that happens like when you try to, you get into a state on YouTube or something where you I had a Google account and then that got ported over to YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's like, that's the YouTube account, but it doesn't have some permissions for some reason.
Because it got ported and
nobody can figure out why.
Yeah.
And then you get the runaround from tech support for, in this case, 14 months.
That's the thing. When stories like this come out, usually what you end up with is a lot of other people who are like, oh yeah, it's really annoying to use this process. It's really hard to do this thing. And I haven't seen really much of that happen, and their Twitter's like, it was easier to port to Nintendo and PlayStation and basically everything but Xbox because of this problem that they were incurring. And I'm like, it sounds weird then, because it's like, it doesn't seem like it's a widespread problem.
It is right. This feels I feel like this could be the problem is that I want to say the problem is that they had a Skype account. Under the same email address, and that somehow got integrated into the larger piece that now it doesn't work.
I don't know. I when it boils down to, it's still things. It's frankly just dumb that they can't get somebody to help them fix it.
Yeah,
through 14 months, and
especially when you are in the that developer position where literally time is going on, and every day, every time you're like, should I spend time should I spend time keeping my developers working on this thing that we can't figure out how to actually get it out?
Yeah.
Or do we have to move our resources somewhere else? Every day that we're spending working on this might be just wasted time and wasted money.
And might be
the longer you can't launch on another system, right? More time passes is.
Yeah. There's two ways this can go, because the one side of it is like we're saying that they fell through the cracks. That. God, I had a nugget of a thought here that was pretty good, because it's clearly not maliciousness. I don't think the people at Xbox are going to turn around and...
Not likely.
No, these are the kind of things where you feel like it's incompetence. That you'd actually somebody didn't see an email, or the emails got sent around to whomever, or somebody's trying to fix a problem and they're not really getting there. It doesn't really matter why, because you end up with somebody being like, well, that doesn't matter to me why the problem is happening. The fact is that it's happening. And from a customer service perspective, it's like, right, you want to try to make things better, but, depending on how it's all shaking out. But then the two reasons, right? It's like the reason why we don't hear about this stuff maybe isn't because, it's not that widespread, or maybe it's because other developers have been like, I tried to get my shit set up to do this. I can't. Well, fucking whatever. And they go on with their lives and they don't think about releasing their stuff to Xbox.
Well, I was thinking
don't tell anybody.
If you were a dev doing this versus maybe you have a publisher who's doing it for you, a publisher would already have probably all that stuff set up.
There's that too.
And they would handle that. So maybe it's not a thing that you see.
Yeah. Sometimes stuff goes to a porting house, right?
Yeah,
Like you send to a porting studio. Instead, they already know how to make stuff for Xbox. They have their accounts. So that's why a lot of games might show up there. But I like this idea of maybe other people have had the similar experience and they never talked about it.
See, to simplify things, what you do is you get somebody to handle all that for you, like say, Humble Games. And that way they just deal with all the actual account stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you won't have a problem later. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's kind of it's kind of so far behind a curtain that it's hard for me to tell the face of the story if this is a problem that many people face and Xbox should get their butts looked at, or if it's just this is a customer service problem in the end and they should do better.
I just saw, I want to shout out to Account Made for Ants said that, because I was talking about, this is x86 64 and the other thing is ARM, and it's like, apparently no, the Xbox Series X and Series S are x86 64. So thanks, Ants. Thanks.
You just wanted to get that joke in there, didn't you?
I really wanted to point that out, and then I realized I could also say that. So,
okay.
Yeah. It's like, one thing is more important than the other in this case.
The Thance joke.
Porting house is not a proper industry term. It's something that I just think that's what you would refer to those as. Thank you, Ants. Again, Thance.
Just one or two little more stories here. This might be relevant to you, Bij. Animal Crossing Pocket is shutting down.
Pocket Camp, yeah.
Animal Crossing Pocket Camp is shutting down. But they're doing it in an interesting way.
Yes.
And not the weird Sonic thing that we talked about last week. So Pocket Camp, Animal Crossing Pocket Camp is shutting down. That was sort of at
some point it has to end of life.
Yeah. And Pocket Camp is in the kind of, it's got microtransactions and all that kind of stuff. The bells? No.
No, you buy Leaf tickets.
Leaf tickets,
all
stuff.
This is also probably even more relevant to Heather because she was playing it before I was. I think,
really?
Too. Yeah, we were both playing it for a while. But yeah.
But what they've decided to do is the online Animal Crossing Pocket Camp with the Leaf tickets and everything is going away. It is going to be replaced by Animal Crossing Pocket Camp,
the paid app.
The paid app. So it was a free-to-play game with microtransactions. They're going to take it, they're going to remove that from the store. They're going to make a new app that is paid to buy, but it just has everything. There's no microtransactions.
Yeah. So it's also an offline version.
It's also not online, so it won't get
so you can't do. I think they said functionally the game's mostly going to be the same, but you can't do gifts to friends
or visit each other's
visit
places.
each other or whatever. But not there's no that game was you had to be online to play.
There are also aspects to that game that visiting the quarry was something where you had to be I need help from 5 friends, and you'd ask 30 people.
Those were things they had kind of added later down the line anyway. So
yeah, presumably that kind of stuff
goes away, right? But the other way to get into the quarry, if you can't get help from friends, the other way to get into the quarry is to pay Leaf tickets for it. Well, Leaf tickets are not a thing that you'll be able to purchase, and you're not able to bring over your Leaf tickets that you've already purchased.
That's the other important thing. You'll have to buy the new game if you want to continue to play it with the purchase.
They haven't said how much it costs.
No, they haven't said that. But what they are intending to do is for you to move your save data over as long as it's connected to a Nintendo account is how they're intending to do it. So if you haven't connected your thing to a Nintendo account,
I'm surprised that you could have been playing without it being connected to a Nintendo account since it had to be online anyway.
It's so long ago, I don't remember.
I know that when I downloaded it recently, that because I hadn't had it installed for a while, it said, "Oh, you need to update this." I'm like, "Sure." 1.2 gigabytes of updates later, a new version of the app, and then also all that updated stuff. And then it was like, you need to log in at Nintendo.com. So you click the button, it brings up the browser window real fast. It lets you log in and then come back. So it's like you need a Nintendo account to operate Pocket Camp.
Yeah, like when Pocket Camp started, they had Leaf tickets you could buy. They didn't have a lot that you could do with them. Like you could speed stuff up. You could do like general transaction things. But the fortune cookie thing they introduced later with the special fortunes and stuff was kind of where they really started pushing that. And then a little while later, they added in like a subscription thing and some other stuff. And I kind of stopped paying attention around then.
Yeah. I recently reinstalled it just because I have a need to collect some platinum points so I can get some stuff off the store, and I needed an easy way to do it. And the easiest way to do it was to be like download the old apps. So
I remember I think the last time I played it was when I got Horizons, because it had like a connection thing you could do where you could get the Animal Crossing Switch in your Horizons game if you connected.
Yeah. But
of the various ways that a game can end of life and shut down, this seems like obviously it would be nice if they weren't charging money for the different version, but that's how it is.
I think how I'm looking at it is like, and I don't know how much they're going to charge for it. I'm just going to assume it's $10 Canadian. Like I'm just going to assume that's what it's going to cost, because maybe it'll be cheaper and they'll be like, oh, that's interesting, or maybe it'll be more expensive and be like, well, that's not worth it. But
Nintendo does have the thing where they are willing to put their apps on pretty, they tend to be not the cheapest.
Yeah, they're not driving into the basement. Like Square Enix is the same way. You can buy any of the Final Fantasies on iOS and they don't drive them to the basement. They're like, you have to pay like $30 or whatever for a copy of that game.
Yeah,
or whatever.
but I think like Mario Run was only $10, wasn't it?
Yeah, Mario Run was pretty cheap. This is an idea of how to take something like an end of life network game and say, how do we make it still something that people can use and enjoy, when we know we're going to have to put in some development effort to change things about how the game works, and probably also think about how the economy works in a game like that, and how maybe Leaf tickets are still a thing, but they're awarded in different ways in the game. And
yeah, that's possible.
There's a lot of things that I'm sure that they're considering about how do you change and adapt this, and rather than just say the game is done and it goes away, they say the game is done and we're putting it into permanent maintenance mode, or not even permanent maintenance mode, but an idea of like, as long as the version of iOS that you have or the version of Android that you have is compatible with the version of the game that we've made, you can have it. And if at any point in the future iOS 24 changes something and our game is no longer compatible, we might not recompile it for the new iOS. We might just decide that it's not worth keeping around anymore because we don't want to have a person who's assigned to it in the background doing it.
That is an annoying aspect of I mean, I don't know if I'm assuming Android has the same problem. iOS does that games do, or programs do have to be updated to a certain extent.
Yeah. And I just think that this is an interesting way to say you can continue to have this up to a certain point. We love the idea of games should last forever, obviously. I think it would be, phone games seem to have a different sort of ephemerality.
I'm just kind of interested in more of the you can play the game offline, because I remember a couple of times just wanting to do essentially chores and not like connect to anybody or do anything. It wouldn't let me because you have to be online all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll buy it. I need to see how much that is.
It is also,
I also haven't played it in a while, and maybe I don't care.
It is also telling that Super Mario Run, I reinstalled that. It still works on my phone for now. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like, it had to download a new version, but whatever. That's still a going concern for for Nintendo. Dragalia Lost famously shut down a little while ago. Mario Kart Tour, I think, is still operating. I don't have it or whatever. Fire Emblem Heroes is probably still making $1 billion a year.
Yeah, I think
Dragalia lost that one for a while.
And I think Dr. Mario were the ones that got shut down. Oh, and Miitomo.
Yeah. But it is
if
funny.
Anyone remembers Miitomo.
It's funny how little we heard about Fire Emblem Heroes after like the last time we dropped a piece of information about this is how much this made in a year, and we're like, fucking what? It made $1 billion? I guess there's that money out there.
Yeah.
The next $1 billion milestone they hit, I guess we'll find out about it again.
Yeah.
Okay, and finally, this is I want to last week I actually mentioned that with the sad demise of Game Informer, my news feeds are sometimes I don't have as much sources that I used to have, and asking for suggestions, and a couple people gave me some suggestions, and I also said if there's any piece of news that may not have hit the sort of mainstream stuff that you think would be interesting, send them my way. So big shout outs to the Nerd Wonder, who emailed me about this, and I looked into it myself, and it's kind of great. Again, one of these stories that actually sort of started a little while ago, and it's kind of getting resolved now, but I still think it's great. So this is about Helldivers 2.
Okay.
Helldivers, so they did a recent update, which, with the need, there was some balance changes that were not popular. We've talked before about various, it's a delicate balance that they're trying to hit, right?
Sure.
And so the escalation of freedom update, I do like Helldivers' whole, mythology. They put in some big nerfs to fire damage in the game, which obviously had a big impact on flamethrowers, which people were really enjoying using.
Yeah, flamethrowers are fun.
I
don't play Helldivers too.
There
Flamethrowers
was
are fun.
already a lot of, there was already some grumbling about various other changes that we've touched on briefly, I think, in other chill points or whatever.
Okay.
People, changes to buffs and different things. People don't think that the developers are going in the right direction in terms of how they're prioritizing things.
Okay.
Basically. And so a group of a contingent of players decided to make their voices heard in protest.
Oh no, this is the best way possible.
By effectively not playing the game.
Oh.
Deliberately losing.
They're letting the bad guys
landing
win.
and then just being like
So
dying?
because how the game, there's this sort of, because Helldivers has the, you fight the robots or the bugs or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's also this sort of overarching campaign, right, where it's like, we need people to code this, and then you're sort of contributing to an overall
They're
thing.
supposed to be saving a thing, and they're not saving it.
And so they're like, what if we let Super Earth burn? Because of course Super Earth is the planet. And it was working. Like the robots were like taking over
They were
sectors.
getting really close to actually winning,
taking
weren't
over
they?
sectors.
Wow.
And people, and in fact, they started, because Helldivers, what's great, Helldivers has this kind of mythology. They started actually like role playing. They called themselves Chaos Divers. Like they actually were like role playing as being like a renegade faction.
Okay.
This was not like part of the game.
No, they're doing this outside of the game on
Yeah.
forums and stuff, on Reddits. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So unfortunately, so they were like, basically everyone was like,
What happens
if, like, intellectually, we all know that for the game to work, there has to, like, the bad guys can't win. Because
Right.
then there would be
It'd just be over.
The players would have nowhere to go.
Right.
And do. So intellectually, you sort of know that it's like, it's supposed to give the idea that you have to fight, but there isn't really a thing. And so people are like, well, what will happen when the bad guys get to Earth? Now, there's a suspicion that there may be in future updates, like fighting on Earth.
Oh, okay.
But they're not ready yet. And
All
so they started getting closer, the sectors, the sort of incursion of the robots towards Earth started getting closer and closer. And then a couple days ago, they released what's it called? A major order, which is like, an announcement.
Okay.
An in-game or in-world announcement saying, while our attention has been diverted by the gloom, the automatons have crept closer to Super Earth. We will not tolerate the menacing of any Super Earth citizens, especially not the high classification citizens in the developed worlds, whose commitment to managed democracy has been proved beyond doubt. Basically,
Especially not the billionaires.
The idea that the people on the planets closer to the Earth are the richer people who they don't care if the people on the outer skirts get The Helldivers will launch an assault on the automatons and push them away from Super Earth. Right. So they were like, and indeed the overall thing seemed to be there. Of course. The thing about these kind of games, as with anything, right? The company, right, is obviously, they're God, right? They're in charge of the entire universe.
Right.
They could say that, oh, look, everybody got together and fought the people off.
Yeah.
Even if no players were actually doing that.
Exactly.
All they have to do is change a number somewhere in their database and
Yeah.
they're winning. And people suspect that maybe they're fudging the numbers in terms, maybe it's that thing where like the bad guy, if you see that in sometimes they do that in horror games where like the monster just like jump scares and you run away and it jump scares you and you run away and jump scares and you don't run away and you realize that the monster never actually attacks you. They're just jump scaring you.
Yeah, the whole time. Yeah.
And you're actually safe.
There's some neat stuff within horror games where I know there's one that's like the further if you can't see the monster can actually move faster because it needs to catch up with you.
Right.
Yeah.
Or there's all sorts of things that people fudge, games fudge the numbers, which is, entirely valid thing to do in order to enhance the experience. So anyway, we don't know, and they are actually they have also talked about that they're going to be releasing a patch that might address some of the issues that people have put out, saying that they're saying that they misjudged some of the aspects of this last update. They're going to reevaluate things. They haven't committed to anything in particular, but so perhaps there's a little bit of give and take there. Anyway, I hope that they are working on what I hope that they do is they work on building the infrastructure for doing missions, on Super Earth or whatever. What would be great is if they did that and then deliberately put out a bad patch to piss people off again.
Like, well, your move.
What you gonna do about it? It would be a shame if you let the bad guys win, and then we could show you all this new content.
I love the idea of them just being like, so we nerfed flamethrowers further. That something stupid like it's like, oh no, flamethrowers do as much damage as they did before, except that 80% of the time they'll just explode on your back and kill you. You can use them if you want, but get fucked.
There was a game announced at Gamescom that you might be interested in, Beej.
Yeah.
Netflix is getting Monument Valley 3.
Oh, no shit. That sounds great. Which means I'll be able to play it for free as long as I have a Netflix subscription.
Yep.
Yes.
Or somebody in my family does.
Or someone who the password of does.
I know we're finishing up the thing. I did hint earlier.
So
Nintendo is making a museum.
They have made a museum.
They have made a museum. They started this about a couple years ago. They told us about it. The breaking ground on an older factory where I guess they made Famicoms and Super Famicoms or
Hanafuda cards originally used to be made there too. I think.
Okay.
Wasn't
it? I don't know if that was the same building.
maybe
it
that
sounded like
wasn't
it was
that.
the same building, but anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was an old factory that they've basically revamped the whole thing into a proper museum. It's opening on October the 2nd. And it's going to be, Heather filled me in, it's going to be lottery only for the first 2 months if you want to get access to it. So there's that. It is, if you watch the video, it's very interesting. And I had a lot of thoughts about it because if there's something Japan is very good at, it is the codification of their culture and paying attention to things that they deem are historic. And the weird wrinkle about this is a corporation deciding to put this kind of thing together. And it gave me a lot of thoughts and a lot of thinking. And yes, we did not have ChillPoint this week. And I'm going to be thinking about it for a little bit longer. And when ChillPoint returns, maybe I will write a story about it.
Is that an unusual thing? Like I know in North America, like the GM museum or a museum dedicated to a particular company isn't that unusual.
The idea of because the thing is that a corporation deciding to make a museum that represents here's our history is more about here's our history that we want to show you. Right? I think that if you go to the IBM museum, they do not have a heavy thing about here's what we did during the Holocaust. I'm pretty sure they don't lean on that pretty heavily, right? So this is an instance of a corporate museum which also feels a lot like an attraction. And I have no problem with that because attractions are fun. But I have thoughts, so I want to really work through it.
I also they didn't show us like everything because they want people to go.
Yeah.
So I assume that once people are able to go, lottery, like especially after the lottery system is done with and people can kind of go in on their own, you'll start to see influencers who go. And I'll probably watch some of those because I'm curious about other stuff that they didn't really show off. But they did show like some really weird displays, things of like old board games and stuff that they used to manufacture,
pre-video game
and
stuff.
some of that stuff as well. So
but
it's the fun part to watch for that video because it's like 10 minutes or something. Is there's a section where you can play some games. It's meant to be like 2 people at a time on these giant controllers. And the reason you want to watch this isn't because of like the giant NES controller. It's the giant Wiimote that 2 people are in the background holding together to like clearly move a thing while
that's amazing.
Miyamoto is talking.
Amazing.
That's what you need to look for.
Yeah.
Also, the other thing that I heard that I saw about the museum is the tickets are done, on a lottery system through your Nintendo account, and they come printed with your Mii on them.
Aw, that's great.
I like my Mii.
That's a great keepsake. Very personalized.
Also makes it so you can't resell it.
There's that too.
Yeah. I saw somebody in the chat ask about Secret Level, which is that what kind of anthropology? No, anthology series that Prime's going to be doing. That's made by the people who worked on Love and Robots. I'm interested to see where that goes, but there's nothing to really talk about it as far as I know.
Yeah, I'm hoping they.
I'll probably watch it.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's more into the video game stuff than into the Love and Robots. Had some cool ideas, but
it said stuff based on like it had Pac-Man in there, but also like Warhammer 40K and D&D. Love and Robots, I liked some stuff of it, and I didn't like other parts of it.
Some of the stuff in Love and Robots was not so good. But anyway, all right. That is all the news that we thought was interesting to talk about. As Beach just mentioned there with the museum thing, and typical for ChillPoint when we don't have a checkpoint, there's a non-zero chance that some of the things we talked about here might show up in a future episode of Checkpoint if we feel that, especially if they sort of continue to be newsworthy going forward, if new information comes out or whatever.
Yep.
But it'll probably be a more actually like funny and written take than just us randomly talking about it. It'll, be like researched probably.
May I suggest, this has been ChillPoint. This is all the news we've chosen to peruse.
Ooh, I like that. All the news we've chosen to peruse. So thanks everybody for watching, and we will talk to all y'all later.
Hit up the Patreon. Don't forget the Patreon.